Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. It's just gone 1 o'clock, so I'm just going to give everyone a chance to join. Do feel free to drop into the Q&A box and say hi. We've disabled the chat feature as we've discovered it can cause problems for some people using screen readers. So I'm just going to leave it a few more moments for people to arrive and then we'll get started. Okay, I can see lots more of you have joined now, so we're going to officially start the webinar. So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is how to excel at inclusive onboarding and induction. My name is Annie Mannion and I'm Digital Communications Manager at AbilityNet, and I'll be running you through what you can expect from today's session. So just to go through a few bits of housekeeping. The session is being recorded. Live captions are being provided by My Clear Text, so thank you to Claire who's doing those in the background. You can turn on captions using the closed caption option on the control panel, and there are also additional live captions via streamtext.net, and slides are available at slideshare.net/AbilityNet, and then also on our website at abilitynet.org.uk/onboarding-webinar. And if you have any technical issues and you need to leave early, don't worry, you'll receive an email with the recording, the transcript and the slides on Thursday afternoon. And then depending on how you joined the webinar, you'll find a Q&A window. So if you want to ask the speakers any questions, do drop those in the Q&A area for us to address later on or after today's session in a follow-up blog on our website. And then you'll be presented with a feedback form at the end of the session, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take just a couple of minutes to answer this. So moving on, for those of you who aren't yet familiar with AbilityNet, we're a charity that supports people of any age living with any disability or impairment to use technology to achieve their goals at home, at work and in education. And we do this by providing specialist advice, services, free information resources like this webinar, and I'll share a little more about our services at the end of the webinar. Okay, great. So today we welcome Trevor Jennings, who is Risk Manager at Lloyd's. He'll be chatting with Amy Lowe, who's Service Delivery Director at AbilityNet, about how Lloyd's approaches inclusive, accessible onboarding best practices. And then we have Rena Wharton and Daniel McLaughlin, who are usability and accessibility consultants at AbilityNet, and they'll share how onboarding is done at AbilityNet. So just before we kick off today's webinar content, I'm just going to start with the poll. So can you tell us how confident are you that your organisation, if applicable, is doing onboarding in an inclusive, accessible way? Are you very confident we have fully inclusive, accessible policies and procedures? Are you quite confident? There may be some things we could do better, but generally we get things right. Are you not very confident? We still have a lot to learn and implement. Not at all confident, my organisation needs to make major improvements. Or not applicable, I don't belong to an organisation. So again, just depending on how you've joined the webinar, you may find you can't see the poll, but you can respond in the Q&A panel if you wish. So I'm just going to leave it a few more moments for anyone else that would like to vote. Okay. See the numbers going up. Not everyone's voted, but I'm just going to end the poll now and share the results. And so the answers are coming through. So the most is quite confident. There may be some things we could do better, but generally we get things right. That's 46% of you. And then not very confident, we still have a lot to learn, is 37%. Then next is not at all confident, my organisation needs to make major improvements, that's 11%. I don't belong to an organisation, is 5%. And then an amazing 1% of you are very confident we have fully inclusive, accessible policies and procedures. Well, Daniel and Rena will share some really great pointers with you for how you can make improvements. So over to you both.
Thanks very much, Annie. So first of all, just some stats and figures on this slide about why we should think about inclusive onboarding, why it's the right thing to do. This is a survey by Bamboo HR, and their findings were that from 1,000 employees, a survey of 1,000 employees, employees were 18 times more likely to feel highly committed to their organization if they felt that they had an inclusive onboarding experience. They were 30% more likely to feel strongly integrated into the workplace culture, 30 times more likely to have a high job satisfaction, again, if they were satisfied with their onboarding experience, and overall 38% more confident in their ability to do their job. So the key takeaway here is that by providing that inclusive onboarding experience, colleagues will feel, supported. They will feel that loyalty to the organization, and that satisfaction and confidence in their ability to do their role. So why focus on inclusion itself during the onboarding process? Because it's our one-shot opportunity to make sure that we are providing the most effective onboarding experience for all colleagues. In previous sessions, we would have talked about the recruitment process and this idea that that's like your elevator pitch. You're kind of, selling why people should want to come and work for your company. Well, the onboarding process is where you put that into practice. You deliver on those promises. We can think about focusing not only on the process of onboarding, so, the kind of things that we have to tick off, but also the experience itself. So what are you doing to make the employee feel welcome in the organization, to make them feel supported, and to make them feel like they are part of the team? Too often onboarding can be its own separate thing. And until you start doing the day job, you can sometimes feel a little bit isolated as well. Onboarding is also a really good opportunity to demonstrate your commitment to inclusion through words and actions. So taking into account all the things that you said you would do during the recruitment process, this is a good opportunity to do that during the onboarding process. This could be things like flexible working options. It could be things like providing assistive technology under the Access to Work scheme. And it could be other things. And some of these might come up during our conversations today. It's also an opportunity to think about the impact of that individual joining the company, not only for themselves, but also for the wider team. Having new people join the company brings lots of positives, but it also brings considerations for how that will affect the wider team in terms of, availability of staff members to mentor that individual, appropriate time to allow them time to learn new skills as they join the company, and appropriate time for other staff to share their expertise as well. And it's a really good time to engage the whole team in that process as well. And on time, taking the time to get it right. We can't treat onboarding as this kind of turn up on day one, get your login credentials and off you go. You need to take the time to make sure that you're building a really strong foundation for that new starter, so they feel that they're building not only new knowledge, but also new support networks, so they know where to go beyond their induction. And invite regular feedback. No onboarding process is going to last in a fixed, rigid format. It needs to be constantly tweaked to suit the needs of the individual and the organization. So seeking feedback from the individual going through your onboarding process, as well as colleagues interacting with that new individual about what works and what doesn't work and what could we do better. Just a brief overview of what onboarding looks like at AbilityNet. Most of this is geared towards us as accessibility consultants, but there is some overlap with the wider organization. So everyone who works at AbilityNet creates a Clear Talents at Work profile, and this is a really good way of self-reporting what additional support you might require in order to carry out your role effectively. It could be things like needing information ahead of time for meetings, for example. That's the kind of adjustment that actually benefits everyone. It also can be used to signpost practical guides and kind of self-help articles for people to adopt different working styles to support them. And at AbilityNet, it's something that your line manager will have access to. The employee can review it annually or as needed and update that. And it's something the line manager can then discuss with them to decide which adjustments can be made, which are appropriate. Off the back of that, we also signpost resort. So we have a health and well-being section on our intranet, and that points colleagues towards our employee assistance program, which is a way of providing 24/7 telephone support to provide advice and assistance with your mental well-being, and also counselling if required. We have a self-paced e-learning platform, Talent LMS, so all new starters are able to complete core modules that they will need to know the knowledge in order to do their job. But they're also then able to learn information about the wider organization, how the different parts all fit together as well. It is self-paced, and it's very much the kind of thing where it provides information in different channels, text, images, multimedia, and you can discuss with your line manager as you work through it any queries and concerns as well. For all consultants, we put them through their IAP certification. This is an international accredited certification in accessibility, both the core competencies and the web accessibility specialist. So part of that initial onboarding process, which takes 6 weeks, is time to revise for that certification. And also having that 6 weeks really affords you the opportunity then to provide opportunities for the new consultant to shadow their colleagues, get exposed to different ways of working and different deliverables before they've actually started doing the day-to-day work. And also finding social opportunities as well. So we strongly encourage colleagues to, we're remote at the moment, but to have kind of coffee meetups, whether that's across Zoom or Teams, or if it was in person, go out to the local area, learn a bit about the amenities nearby as well. And the last thing we cover during the onboarding process, and this is very high level, is setting some initial core priorities. We set core priorities 4 times a year, and they are negotiated with your line manager, and you can very much work towards those during each quarter. And that ties in very nicely with what we call the skills matrix. And I think we'll talk a bit more about this in another session. But this is very much mapping out your career progression at the company. So it's very employee driven because you can see exactly what you need to do in order to progress within AbilityNet. I'm now joined by my colleague, Rena, and we're going to work through some of the core questions around providing an inclusive onboarding experience and see if what Rena's experience of that has been at AbilityNet and in general. Thanks for joining me, Rena.
Hiya.
So first of all, thinking about your onboarding experience at AbilityNet, tell us about the most positive aspects of onboarding in terms of accessibility and inclusion.
Well, I think the main kind of positive part of my onboarding experience was the fact that everyone and the organisation as a whole were very accepting, open. Everyone accepted my kind of anxieties and my differences, and they worked with them rather than kind of seeing autism and thinking, oh, this person's going to be like this, or they are or aren't going to be able to do this. And that kind of acceptance and flexibility kind of it basically allowed me to work in the first place, because without that, I just wouldn't be able to kind of sustain full-time work. I think the other thing that allowed me to work effectively is allowing me, as a reasonable adjustment, to work from home permanently. And they continue to accommodate my needs as I learn about myself as an employee. This is kind of the first full-time role I've had. And, you know, as such, I will continue to learn about myself and what I need as a first full-time employment. And that if I find that I need something different, I feel perfectly able to talk to my line manager or other people and just say, you know what, I need to do this slightly differently. And they're like, that's fine, just kind of, or if it's something a bit more challenging, we'll work through it together and find a way that works for everyone.
And you mentioned that colleagues at AbilityNet are very accepting of your disability and your access needs. Why do you think that's the case at AbilityNet?
I think it's the culture of the workplace. I think it at least partly comes from the fact that, you know, we are an organisation that's built around supporting people with disabilities, and that everyone who's working here fundamentally understands that not everyone is the same, not everyone works in the same way, and people are going to need different like levels of support or different kind of ways of working. And I think fundamentally that is ingrained in the organisation. And so everyone who works here just kind of gets it, which is, it's nice and refreshing, because that's not always been the case for me in other like part-time jobs I've had, or you know, like internships and things like that. People haven't always been aware that not everyone works in the same way.
Thank you. Thinking about the way we communicate at AbilityNet, how did AbilityNet communicate with you that inclusion matters?
I think fundamentally by their actions. You know, as the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. And although this is about onboarding specifically, that was this kind of communication, inclusion matters, was there right from the beginning of the recruitment process all the way through to today. You know, that everyone's been flexible and understanding, and that, you know, I might work differently to other people, but then also giving me the chance to say how I might work differently to other people, and not just kind of assuming that sort of thing.
Can you give an example of where you think you might work differently to other people that employers should take into consideration?
I think the main thing is, you know, as a person who has autism, I find that some things I'm not very good at, or I'm, you know, I find it really stressful or anxiety provoking. And, you know, as I find those things that are difficult for me, we just kind of work together to find a way around them. Whereas in previous jobs, it's kind of been, oh, okay, so you're special. What's a special way to deal with you then? And just like almost highlighting the fact that, you know, I am different and I am not the same as everyone else, and therefore I need specific, like, planned adjustments. Whereas here it's much more like, okay, well, you work differently, how can we accommodate that, and how can we do it without, you know, necessarily highlighting that to every single person who you come in contact with.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a key thing there about highlighting it to only the relevant people. One thing I've seen on the kind of HR side, when we are onboarding new staff and they are completing that clear talents profile, they can disclose personal information about, you know, how they need to be supported, and that's relevant for me as their line manager, but it's not necessarily something that I should or need to share with the wider team. You know, core here being that if some of these things are just the way we do things, then actually it's just business as usual. But also to your point about not treating those requirements as kind of a special case. I've had new staff members ask me to, you know, provide information ahead of time, or break questions into smaller questions, you know, focus on a single point per question. Actually, that's beneficial for all of us, just to adopt that as a standard practice when we are setting up meetings, for example, or when we're planning any kind of, you know, question and answer session. It's very useful to all of us to be able to do that.
Yeah, That's one of the things that I find particularly useful as well, is having things ahead of time so that I can think about what I'm doing and make sure things come out in the right order.
Yeah. Thinking about our technical processes, is there anything about our processes or systems, particularly for onboarding, but in general, that work well for you in terms of accessibility?
I think one thing that I find really useful, which is more specific to how we kind of work within the accessibility team, but we have a sales team and we have a planning team, and that means that there's like dedicated teams toward who handle all of the kind of selling and the scheduling, and there's like that clear division of responsibility. So I know that my job is to do my job, rather than, oh, so I've now got to organize this meeting or that meeting and I don't know what's in my diary and that sort of stuff. And along with that, we also have a piece of software that the planning team use to plan in all of our work. So we can see in advance, normally at least a couple of weeks in advance, okay, so next week I'm going to be doing that specific piece of work and these are the details for it, and I know what's coming. And for me, that's really important, is having that predictability about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think with that particular piece of software, being able to see what work is available, it's great for the individual, but it's also great for the organization, because we can see each other's work as well. So you can very much get a sense of what are other people working on. This is very useful to me as a line manager during onboarding, because it means I can highlight to the individual opportunities to go and shadow another consultant, for example. But it also works well for other colleagues, because it means that at any time you can see what someone else is working on. And if you have a particular interest in a particular piece of work, you can ask to collaborate with them, or at least speak to that planning team about being moved on to that particular project as well. I think another sort of couple of pieces of software that we use, or systems that come to mind, we have Confluence, which is our wiki, where we create a shared body of knowledge. Personally, I think that's very empowering, because we allow all staff to contribute to that, and try and make that as useful as can be. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I found that really useful, not only using it as like a body of knowledge, but also the opportunity to ask questions. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, I am one of those people who goes in somewhere and asks like a million questions and needs to know exactly what I'm doing and how to do it. And that kind of body of knowledge that, like, okay, so this is the piece of work or the deliverable that we're doing, this is how you do it, here's some common questions, and then if there's something in there that you're not quite sure about, you can maybe add a comment onto the page in Confluence, or you can kind of link to it on other kind of communication channels and go, oh, well, I've seen this, but I'm not quite sure about this bit. Can anyone kind of, say any more about this or expand on it? And I find that really useful to kind of just help me know where I'm going with things.
Yeah, I think it's also important to stress here that having great documentation is really useful, but it's also no substitute for having those conversations. I think too often we can write something and then just assume that everyone will read it and understand it. So yeah, it being such a collaborative tool like that, it is very organic. It's a great kind of conversation starter. Hopefully it puts people on the same page, particularly new consultants, to kind of learn the kind of space that we want to talk in, and then work out how to answer the particular query. So yeah, it's a good tool. Thinking about AbilityNet's onboarding and your autism specifically, what practices at AbilityNet were most helpful to you?
I think the main thing through kind of, and this was even through the recruitment process, but this continued on through the onboarding and further on from that as well, was having one point of contact. I got to know that person. They replied when I needed them to. It was kind of someone that I knew, especially when you're joining a larger team where you've got quite a few different people, and you don't know any of them. You don't know any of their kind of quirks or like how they work. And especially for me with my autism, I haven't learned any of their kind of body language, their facial expressions, which remotely is not quite so much of a big issue. But at the same time, it's there's also like signal, the way they talk even over chat. And I found having that one point of contact that, like, I know this person, I can go to them if I've got any questions, and they'll kind of point me in the right direction. I found that really useful. It kind of reduced the anxiety about moving into a big team. And for me personally, I find that really useful.
You mentioned that because you're working remotely, trying to read people is not always such a big issue in the same way because it is remote. How have you noticed the difference compared to joining, as you say, like a larger team remotely, compared to maybe examples where you've joined a team and you've been working face to face?
So I think the big difference for me is just, without having to learn all of their body language and things like that, I don't have them, in my head, and they might not necessarily be doing this, but I find it really difficult to make eye contact, and a lot of people kind of see that as rude or uninterested. And being able to do it over chat is, I get to know someone and nobody makes any judgments about the way I hold myself, so that we actually get to know each other on, like, this is who I am, rather than this is what I look like, or this is how I act when I'm around other people. And actually I find I'm much more confident about kind of just reaching out to someone and going, hey, how are you, what you doing today, rather than if I'm in an office, I always feel really uncomfortable just going up to, because I don't really know how to start those conversations in person.
Yeah.
So I find it much more easy to do it over chat.
Yeah. And I think that's also, for new starters, that's where the line manager can at least help initially, because you're right. I mean, I would agree. I think most of us will feel quite intimidated joining a team and having to have those initial conversations when you don't know each other. So, being remote and doing it over chat is great, but also hopefully setting up situations where you can put groups of employees together and introduce them to each other. But yeah, we've seen a lot of conversations over the past year about remote working, using Zoom, using text chat. It's good to hear that some of that has actually been beneficial to you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
AbilityNet, our day-to-day is working with clients to help create their workplaces accessible by design. What aspects of the working environment here do you think are particularly inclusive by design?
I think fundamentally the main one for me is just kind of allowing me to work from home. A lot of people, particularly before 2020, were like, oh no, you definitely can't do that work from home. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm just working on a computer and sitting in an office. So why can't I work on my computer sitting in an office at home, where I don't have to deal with all of the lights, the noise, the people, which actually make me less efficient and productive as an employee. Whereas if I'm at home in an environment that I can control, I'm much more able to focus on what I'm doing. And actually, as someone with autism, I find myself able to much more effectively hyper focus. So I can get through a lot of work, but not in an office environment. But being able to do that has meant that I've been much more able to succeed at my job.
Yeah.
I think another like element of it is the fact that everyone's so understanding, and no one kind of questions kind of, oh, but you're not quite doing it the same way as me, you have to do it this way. Well, if it works for you, then it works for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's very pleasing to hear, but yeah, that's exactly the kind of environment that I hope we would be creating here. But yeah, having that flexibility that people do work in different ways as well. And yeah, as you said, we've very much seen that shift now to being able to work at home. Wouldn't necessarily work for every role, but certainly there are definitely aspects of a role that can be done remotely. So I think it's very important that employers at least have that conversation. And that's one thing AbilityNet's been quite open about, is seeking feedback from us about are we comfortable working at home? You know, what works for us? What sort of timeline would it look like if we did want to work in an office, and how often might that be? These are all questions that have come up over the past year.
I think I also quite like the fact that we get the opportunity to feedback, not just around working from home, but we also get the opportunity to feedback about kind of the workload and the culture of the organisation. And I feel like that's putting the employees first and asking them their opinion, rather than just assuming that everyone's happy with the way things are and nothing needs to change.
Yeah, we do our regular peak-on surveys, don't we? But they're always escalated to our kind of all hands calls, obviously, you know, completely anonymous, but they try and at least address any of the concerns that are raised on these surveys about, you know, the working environment and satisfaction at work as well. So yeah. And thinking beyond, you know, what we're maybe already doing, but what could organizations do in general? What other things could they be integrating into their onboarding processes to be more inclusive?
I think the main one for me is flexibility, and that's not just right, you know, these catchphrase terms like flexible working. That's about like fundamental flexibility. How do you need to work to make this work for you? You know, how are you going to get yourself into a place where you can do this work efficiently? You know, what environment works for you? Do you need any kind of assistive technology or reasonable adjustments? Just that whole bubble of flexibility and understanding, I think that could be integrated into any, I mean, you know, any organization can go to their staff, okay, what do you need, or what do you think you need to work more efficiently, or to be more happy, or, you know, to feel more integrated into the team. And it's just having that flexibility around, you know, people might suggest things that you've never thought of, but actually that would be really useful, and having an open mind to kind of hear those things and actually them, rather than asking for them and then just going, no, we won't do that, we've never done that, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, seeking that feedback and have it be a two-way thing where, you know, not only are you listening to the feedback, but you're potentially implementing changes there, which will benefit everyone as well. Yeah. Thank you very much, Rena. Really good to get your experience of onboarding at AbilityNet. Good to hear the things that we're doing right, but also hopefully people have learned some ideas of things that they could also be adopting as well.
No problem.
Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Amy, joined by Trevor from Lloyd's for their Q&A.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Rena, for a really informative and insightful discussion. As Daniel says, I think there's loads for people to think about there in the context of their own organisations, and what can be done. So very warm welcome, Trevor. Lovely to see you. Risk manager from Lloyd's. Trevor has key responsibility for overseeing the day-to-day management of health and safety for Lloyd's UK and overseas staff. And you've got a really broad selection of workplaces that you've worked in the past, haven't you, Trevor? From education, local authority, police services, and NHS trusts. So really looking forward to hearing some of the key best practices that you've picked up along the way. So going on to our first question for Trevor. How would you describe the overall disability inclusion strategy and culture at Lloyd's?
Well, that's certainly an interesting question. I think it's fair to say that we've come a long way over the last few years, as indeed I'm sure a number of organisations have as well. We're very much driven by our senior management team, and they've been very keen to ensure that we've got disability inclusion strategy well and truly developed at Lloyd's. And obviously with that then comes the culture whereby people expect certain things to take place. And one of the things we did do was to put together a number of multiple employee engagement groups So that enabled us to have staff consultation at a fairly sort of formal level. And one of the things I did was to develop or create the disability working group, as it initially became known as, and subsequently it's grown, and we're now referred to as the workability group, because I think that's what it's around. Again, it's the cultural change, isn't it? It's the terminology and people understanding what we're trying to achieve. It's not just purely about disability in the workplace. It is the workability side, somebody able to be able to work effectively in the workplace or indeed at home. And I know we're going to be touching on the remote working in a few questions' time. But workability is, I say, cross-corporation representation. So there's a number of staff in the organisation who have got various types of disability, and not always physical, as we well know. Often it's those disabilities that you can't see. And what we're keen to ensure is that those people have the opportunity to let us know that they've got a problem, they need something resolved, and what is it that we need to do. So it comes back to the whole idea then of reasonable adjustment in the workplace. And that's the real big driver, to be honest. Just after we created the workability group, we became members of the Business Disability Forum, BDF, and there is a number of large organisations and some small ones, admittedly, but particularly within the finance sector and the banks, who are members of BDF, and they're quite clearly a few years ahead as regards some of the issues they were dealing with, because as regards their customers, of course, they've got a much wider needs, not least when it comes to the digital side and accessing accounts and what have you. So I've learned a lot from what the banks are doing. And the great thing about BDF is that they created a number of guides, and they also did an audit on us as well to see how we were doing as regards our disability inclusion strategy, which again helped us to create an action plan and build on it from there. One of the most positive things we did was to go through the Clear Talents process. So we onboarded with Clear Talents. And for people who aren't perhaps familiar with Clear Talents, basically what it is, it's a set of questions which we ask people to complete. And we look at this from those who are looking to join Lloyd. So we do it from the sort of the recruitment side first of all, and then we look at it from the onboarding side once somebody becomes a permanent employer with Lloyd's. And it asks a number of questions, and indeed with any of this, it's down to the individual on how much they want to share with us. The only thing we do ask is that they must complete the workstation, the DSE risk assessment. But it looks at communication, it looks at pen and paper issues, it looks at computer. The workspace itself then is predominantly the DSE, the display screen equipment risk assessment. It looks at issues around workplace, it looks at issues around travel, and bearing in mind that that's a big concern for people coming into the city. It's a lot of time out of your day, and for some it's quite a complex journey as well. But even a simple journey for somebody could be quite problematic. So it's an opportunity to raise issues around that. And then there's a nice little catch-all which says, is there more about me that I can tell you about? But as I say, it is down to individuals to let us know, but we provide that facility so that at least we've got the Clear Talents process as a formal process for identifying reasonable adjustments. And then just to throw in an aside to this is the fact that we're a grade 1 listed building. And when it was created back in the early 80s, 86 is actually when it was opened, but obviously from a design point of view, we're looking probably late 70s, early 80s with that. The aspects around disability weren't as well populated as they are today when it comes to construction. So what we have done is done a lot of retrofits as regards improving disability access around the building. Again, it's another crucial part. And if we look at the Clear Talents aspect and we look at the workplace, it's crucial that people can get good access into and out of the building. So we've received improvements in ramps. We've had a new ramp installed just a couple of years ago where people can get from Lime Street down to our reception without using any step access. We've got accessible lifts, which are much easier to use and provide good access through the building. We've got tactile signage around and also on the lift buttons. And also we've got braille on some of the meeting rooms as well, because we do have members of staff who have got issues when it comes to sight. And we've got access doors, electronic access doors, which again, sensor controlled, and they do help people in and out of the building. So we've come a long way, but that doesn't mean to say that we still haven't got more to do. And it's something we do look at on a regular basis.
Brilliant, thanks, Trevor, and lots of amazing progress in there, and highlighting the tools, but also the groups that such as BDF, where you can share the best practice, and all really useful to consider for people on the webinar today. So moving on to our next question, tell us a bit about your role at Lloyd's and how you personally support the onboarding process.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I'm the risk manager. I'm actually within the corporate real estate team, and my day-to-day role is predominantly managing the health and safety function for the organisation. Now, just very quickly about Lloyd's is we're not just Lloyd's Corporation. There's only about 1,000 of us or so at Lloyd's Corporation, but in and out of the building, we've got underwriters and brokers, and we've got tenants, and obviously we've got a number of visitors. Yes, it's different at the moment because of COVID, but pre-COVID, we'd get anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 people through the door every day. So my role itself looks at building users as well and how they can access the building generally and any issues they may have. So it's quite a varied role, but one of the crucial aspects that I've done is to lead Lloyd's certification to ISO 45001, which is the international standard for occupational health and safety. And just interestingly, the last few weeks, what's come out is a 45003 publication, which, although not a standard itself, actually is guidelines towards 45001, and it looks at psychological health and safety at work. So that's an aspect that, while I think we're doing very well, then I shall certainly do some revision into that guidance to see what further improvements we can make, because the psychological side of work is critical. And we're seeing that more as an aspect when we look at various health and safety regulations. For example, workstation DSE regulations are a classic example of that. It is around how people can mentally deal with the workplace. And we know that mental health has become an issue that people have gained focus on, and organizations are concentrating a lot around that now. Because it's about trying to get the work balance, the life balance. Not easy, we all know, but again, when it comes to the reasonable adjustment, we're not just looking at physical disability, we're looking at those that you can't see, and that well may be mental aspects as well. So it's crucial for us that we appreciate that there are challenges that individuals may have, that just looking at an individual you may not know about.
And it's quite a holistic thing as well, isn't it? The physical impacting on the mental and vice versa. So not looking at things in isolation is quite key.
Yeah, you've got to look at the whole picture. You're quite right. So as I say, the Clear Talent DSE risk assessment is probably the primary way in which we look at reasonable adjustment, because majority of the staff, they are computer-based, office-based staff. And we want to make sure, of course, that they're comfortable with the setup that they've got. The majority of people, some minor adjustments probably, but when we start looking at those who have got some significant requirements, then we can then start looking at improvements that are needed, for example, with software. It may be improvements that are needed literally with hardware and different types of mice and also keyboards. But the one thing I have done is created an e-learning module, which everybody goes through when they join Lloyd's, and it deals with health and safety, but we focus very much around the Clear Talents process so that people are very much aware of it. And I also work very closely with colleagues in HR as well, because it's not just about onboarding necessarily. It could be somebody's been off sick for a period of time, they're now coming back into the workplace, and it's about looking at what requirements they need to integrate back into the workplace. So it's quite a challenging role in lots of different ways.
Sounds it, definitely. Lots to keep on top of. So you've touched on quite a bit around technology, going on to our next question, of the role of technology for you and the broader team. So clear talents, assistive technologies and so on. You know, at AbilityNet, we're obviously heavily invested in the role of tech for independence and productivity and comfort in the workplace. How does that sort of fit in at Lloyd's?
Very much so, because as I say, we're heavily dependent on various IT platforms.
Yeah.
And some of the reasonable adjustments that I've helped to get into Lloyd's for individuals, it's been about the bespoke type of software. To name but a couple, there's the Read and Write, which is predominantly for people who have got dyslexia. But to be fair, it's a great software tool for anybody, because it's got things, not least, it's got audio files, so you can read directly into the audio file, and you can play it back on your mobile phone, for example, if you're on the train. So if you're doing something and you want to read it, we'll have it listen back to you. It's a lot better. Dragon is another one, obviously, for the need where people want dictation and things read back to them. But there's also the various accessible applications in Microsoft Office, and not least the 365 suite now. And it's about knowing what they are. And what I will say is, I'm not the font of all knowledge when it comes to the latest. And that's why we rely heavily on people like yourselves, for example, with AbilityNet. Because if I've got an individual where I've done a one-to-one assessment and it's beyond my capability to take this person any further as regards recommendations, then we reach out to yourselves to undertake a specialist DSE assessment. And I know that that could be home-based. Invariably, it's in the office, or of course, during COVID, it's been remotely. And there's been a few times where you've made some really good recommendations, and then obviously we put those into action for the individual concerned. But the one thing I would say is, regardless of what you've got, always talk to the individual concerned, because sometimes what you think they need to in reality what they want could be a little bit different. So it's important to talk to the individual about the necessary actions that they would like to see.
Yeah, that definitely was underlined by what Rena was saying, that two ears and one mouth, isn't it? And not jump in with what you think the answer is before you've taken the time. So talking about the pandemic, how has that impacted at Lloyd's, and how have you had to adapt to the new ways of working?
A fair amount, to be fair.
Yeah.
Suddenly overnight we were working from home. We used to anyway. We were started down the road of flexible working, and it wasn't uncommon for people to work 1 or 2 days a week at home. But suddenly, as a corporation, we were all working from home. So what we had to do was to set up a process whereby we could ensure that people had the right equipment to work at home. Now, fortunately, everybody had laptops. We got Lloyd's laptops that had been rolled out some 18 months earlier. So I think somebody must have known that something was happening. You could have accessed the system through your own PC, but obviously with direct access and a Lloyd's laptop, then it made life so much easier. And Microsoft Teams, as an example, webinars, WebEx has been very good in ensuring that we've got good platforms. But what we did, we created a home working hub on the intranet and made certain allowances. We capped certain furniture and chairs as a price, but where people needed them, because, well, in the office, I have a specialist type of chair because of my need. Well, it's a matter then of doing a home remote DSE assessment and trying to provide the same, because where you've got somebody working at home on a more permanent basis, you want to make sure they're working comfortably and appropriately. What we've done now, we've further developed the hub, and we've actually just launched a couple of weeks ago various packages around chairs and desks for individuals. But it's all reliant on having a clear talent assessment first. The thing about clear talent is that brings in the line manager, and the line manager and the individual then talk about any problems they might have. But we've actually offered a bronze, silver, gold and platinum solution if people need specific furniture, as I say, desks and chairs normally. But as I say, specialist assessments with yourselves where it's needed. So that's an important part for us. But it's now a process we're developing, and we're going to be working more remotely. We know that flexible working is very much here to stay. And it's probably going to be on average 2 days in the office 1 week, 3 days in the office the following. But some people will be working at home a lot more because of the need. It all depends really what your role is and how that fits into Lloyd's.
Makes sense. I'm looking at the time. I'm sorry, Trevor.
It's shooting by.
No, yeah, it is, isn't it? Definitely. So this next question, though, is really important, I think, because, and I know that you feel this way at Lloyd's as well, the importance of co-design and working in partnership with disabled employees. So how would your disabled staff describe the support at Lloyd's if we were to talk to the workability group, for instance, or maybe a new person coming in?
Well, I'd like to say that they think that it's excellent. It's easy enough to say that, but I think we've got good supporting evidence to say we've got a really robust system in place. But, and there's always a but, I must emphasize that we're always willing to learn how we can do it better. And it is one of those things, as I say, even with the remote working hub we've got, that's work in progress as well. So we're going to see how that develops and how we need to adjust that as we go through. But we do have the formal process, obviously, through Clear Talents, but there's the informal process. And the one thing I do say to everybody is, look, if you've got an issue, drop me an email. Let's have a discussion. One of the things that we've lacked in having to work from home is that discussion in the workplace. And it's nice. I've been going back into the office a fair amount, obviously, because of my role. But now we're seeing a few more people coming back in. Those discussions are taking place. And it's the one thing which I know people have really missed. It's good to work from home because you can catch up on a lot of things. You can deal with a lot of projects, etc. But the working in the office environment is also important. It's important psychologically. We mentioned already the psychological side to health and safety. And I think it's all part of the big package. So the other thing that I will say is that there's also, and I know that Daniel mentioned it and Rena too, there's the EAP package that we've got. So the Employee Assistance Program, that's always available, that's confidential, and that's available to anybody who's on the Lloyd's books.
Sounds good. And so I know you're also always looking at improving. So what's next? What's the one hot topic that you're focused on doing next to help with inclusive practices?
Well, I think it comes back to the remote working package that we're developing. Now we've had to make it more formalized. You know, as I say, it was suddenly everybody's working from home. I think we got through it really well and we provided a lot of support, but that support now has become more formalized as well. And there is the potential, and I'm working with the HR team around this, of having actual permanent home workers because of the contract that's required with some people. They can be permanent home workers. So that's something that we are looking at. But I think generally it's about smoothing in the remote working package and getting this transition back into the workplace once the COVID restrictions are lifted, because people have got to get more confident to come back in. And they've just got to get used to the working environment again. So it's that smoothing in process, coupled with the fact that they're going to be working from home more frequently than what they were before we were shut down.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the people we're working with, that blended working practices and making sure that caters to everyone seems to be extremely hot topic. So you're obviously ahead of the curve there. And I'm thinking we've got some questions in the Q&A. So I think it would be good for us perhaps to go across to there now. So Annie is going to appear as if by magic and give us some of those questions.
Well, yeah, thanks so much, Trevor and Amy. And yeah, it sounds like you're doing an excellent job, Trevor. We've had a collection of questions through. I doubt we'll manage to cover everything right now, so we'll capture any unanswered questions, and you'll be sent a link to access them on the website in the next couple of days. So just, there's a question here, just a brief one for you, Trevor. Is it possible to see the e-learning module that Lloyd's have produced? Might we be able, is it only available internally, or
the actual electronic version? Yes, it's only available internally. Having said that, I'm quite happy to share the slides that I've created, because I've created it on a PowerPoint presentation basically. So if the individual concerned would like to drop me an email, then I'm more than happy to share that. That's fine. Okay, wonderful. We'll share contact details on the web page that you'll be directed to in a follow-up email as well. Great. We have a question. This is, how is the way the probation period approached related to onboarding? This one might be a good one for Daniel as well.
Yeah, I think this came in when I was discussing our onboarding approach. So at AbilityNet, we have a 3-month and 6-month probationary review. And I mentioned we also have the core priorities that we complete. So 4 times a year, you would set up with your line manager some core priorities. So the way it works with your onboarding is you have that 6 weeks onboarding. That's very much an opportunity to set some of those early priorities. That's not to say they can't be adjusted, because once you actually start doing the role, you might find that the core priorities need to be slightly different. But typically at that onboarding stage, it's going to be things like collaborating with colleagues and understanding our deliverables, passing your CPAC exams, and working your way through part of the skills matrix as well. One thing we've changed very recently, and it chimes with some of the stuff Trevor was saying about mental well-being, is we're introducing an optional section in our core priorities now where staff can have that conversation, if they're comfortable with it, about how best they want to be supported in terms of their mental well-being, and having that during those one-to-one discussions as well.
Okay, yeah. An interesting question is, how can the importance of discussions in the office be reconciled with flexibility to allow permanent home working for some without creating cliques or exclusion? I don't know if any of you would like to tackle that.
That is a very interesting question. I suppose one way to look at it is to say, if somebody takes a permanent contract to work from home, that's what they know they're doing before they start. So they're going to be working from home all the time. Having said that, then you do have, and there will be, meetings online with teams. And it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody would never come into the office. It could well be that the line manager says, well, in actual fact, it would be nice if once a month everybody did come into the office. We're not saying just because they're permanent workers that they could never come in. It's just the fact that for a large majority of the time, that's where their base is. They're actually based at home. So I think there's that side to it as well. So it comes around the line manager ensuring that he or she is certainly engaged with the team. And that, I think, is one of the things that has become very much a focal point for Lloyd's, to say, look, suddenly you had your teams who were all at home, and the emphasis was on the line manager to try and keep those teams together, making sure that he or she was checking in with them on a regular basis. Within the corporate real estate team, what we decided to do was we have an informal meeting on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10:30, only for half an hour. You attend if you can, but we have a seniors meeting as a formal meeting every Monday morning. So it gives you some idea that we're often in contact with each other. Some teams are meeting less than that, but it works for us very well. So it is down to the individual team to try and determine what's best, but it's around talking to staff to say, look, what works well for you? Because what works well for one person, and I think it's quite clear what Rena was saying, talking to the individuals concerned, they come up with the answers, to be honest, and what they feel is necessary.
Technology's got a brilliant role in it as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
With things like Teams and Slack, and our admin team, who were used to working very closely together, had a channel for planning, like things like lunch breaks, but they had one just for having a giggle on and another one for distributing work. And that just means that even if people aren't, you know, the most forward people, they're being drawn into whatever's going on, and they can dip in and out of those kinds of conversations. So I know, Daniel, your team use Slack, and there's a wealth of fantastic factual and work-related information being shared, but also some, you know, book recommendations and all the sort of water cooler chat that you would have had that's been sort of quite tricky to replicate. And I think as long as people keep one foot in both camps and are sharing on in person and online, I think yeah, it's going to be interesting. But as you say, Trevor, the teams quite often are more likely to come up with the solutions if they're given the chance to influence that.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, just looking at the time, we do have some other questions that have come through, but we should be able to answer those via text on our webpage that you'll be directed to via email in the next couple of days. So yeah, sorry to not be able to answer everybody's questions live on the session, but thanks again, Trevor, Daniel, Rena and Amy. Some excellent pointers for you all to take away. Just on the next slide, there's some contact information for everybody that we will again send through to you in the next few days. And then finally, just to close, some information about our services that may be of interest. We have some workplace specific services which you can find out more about at /workplace, and that covers employee support, inclusive workplaces, bespoke training on a range of topics, gap analysis, helpline and free resources, and then our working from home review at /WFH-review. And then we also run, if you could move on to the next slide, yeah, brilliant, some training sessions on digital accessibility, and you can find out more about that at abilitynet.org/training. We're delighted to provide you with a discount code you can use, which is AbilityNet Webinar 1010, and you can use that for any future bookings for 10% off. And training coming up soon includes how to begin your own accessibility testing, PDF accessibility, InDesign accessibility, and then 2 brand new courses, tech-powered inclusive recruitment and tech-powered inclusive onboarding. So do check those out at /training. And then you can also sign up to our e-newsletter for the latest announcements about digital accessibility at /newsletter. And then don't forget about our next webinars. Our next session is on Tuesday, the 6th of July with Richard Morton from the UK Government's Central Digital and Data Office. And he's speaking as part of our Accessibility Insights series. And then after that, we have on the 20th of July, the business case for accessibility. So thank you all again to everybody who's joined us, and we'll be in touch with you soon. And please do fill out the feedback form that you'll be directed to at the end. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.